When it's pretty rare when we go live during the night, usually for an actual show, not the reaction show we do on Sundays on YouTube, or late Saturday night, early Sunday morning. But yeah, pretty rare for us to do these these. Actually, I can hear myself from the background, the feedback there in my headphones. But yeah, I mean, like I was saying, it's pretty rare for us to do this of a live show like this. Again, except for Tuesdays and whatnot, or for Sundays, early Sundays, late Saturdays. But got a loaded show. Very happy. And the Buccaneers won last night. Talk about that here in a little bit, up until 3 a.m. almost. Because there's every game afterwards I was also paying attention to. But yeah, the Bucs game was early yesterday. But a lot of things to talk about, man. A lot of things to talk about. Got a game, week 4 predictions for college football. Almost halfway through the season. Some big, I'll throw my hand sanitizer there. Some big matchups coming up this weekend. Ones that I think a lot of folks are sort of overlooking back in like the spring and the summer, but here they are. Here they are. Got some thoughts, if you will, on the coaching searches that started this past Sunday. We'll touch on those briefly. Got thoughts on Brian Kelly and his comments. Of course, you have the Tuesday poll, Week 4 edition, and also, at least in the College Bowl side of things, we have some thoughts. I hinted on this back on the reaction show Saturday, Sunday morning about the SEC potentially being an all-out war, potentially. We'll dive into that. And we'll also have Bucs Texans reaction, so make sure to tune in for that. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe to the channel. That's all we ask. The show's free. It's not about the paywall or anything, so totally free of charge there. And, this is episode, what is it now, 127, high top, a dry Jacksonville, Florida afternoon thunderstorm routine. Seems to have calmed down a little bit, even though it's evening now. But of course, we'll be back on the regular schedule Thursday and then next Tuesday. So hopefully this will be the last evening show, at least for a while. But yeah, the afternoon thunderstorm routine. It's been pretty dry here in Jacksonville for a while. A lot of rain and no thunderstorms. So I know you guys can't see me on the podcast feed or on YouTube, but fingers crossed that that's going to be it for the afternoon storm routine, at least until the summer. So get some water real quick. Make sure the voice is ready to go. And we'll get started with our predictions. Auburn at Oklahoma, 3:30 on ABC. I believe this is the game that like Sean McDonough, Greg McElroy, Mike McGrath will be there as well. Oklahoma, according to FanDuel, not a sponsor of the show, just a resource we use for research, kind of getting the vibe of the game, if you will, before. Oklahoma minus 6.5 at home. This, to me, in a lot of ways, it kind of is profiling sort of like the Michigan game for Oklahoma. Very similar. Auburn, the passing offense has not gotten off the ground, which it's sort of, in a sense, is kind of like the whole Georgia thing with, before they played Tennessee Saturday and everyone was, freaking out about, the Austin Peay game and the Marshall game, saying, oh, man, this and that about the Georgia offense. And we saw on when they played Tennessee, when, actual league play or against that reasonable competition, they looked pretty good. They did pretty good. The offense was fine. That could be the case for Auburn. Grant you, they've had a more of a difficult schedule, kind of. They did go on the road and play Baylor. Then they had, USA, not the United States, but South Alabama this past weekend. And then before that, I think it was like Ball State or something like that. So it's sort of similar in a way to Georgia, but the level of difficulty now has been risen because now you're playing Oklahoma. You're playing a very competent defensive coaching staff there, led by Brent Venables, of course, and it's also on the road, which Auburn, at least this decade, has been pretty woeful, and even in out-of-league play, they have been very good in going and getting it done. The thing about Auburn that concerns me, that really does concern me, it's the passing offense, yes, and also the defense. We'll get to that in a moment. But, of course, I mentioned the Michigan game, and it does profile pretty similar to that. Right? Auburn is a more of a running team, and Jackson Arnold, Oklahoma's former quarterback, by the way, if you haven't noticed. He's ran the ball a whole lot, think he's the leading rusher on the team too, so very similar in a sense. Well, it's not that similar, but kind of similar. But the thing that Auburn has that Oklahoma does not have, or at least Oklahoma did not see with Michigan last week or a couple weeks ago now, is the receiver room. While, yes, the Auburn offense has not been, the passing game hasn't been, I don't know, like the 2020 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but, they have players that are a lot better than what Michigan brought to the table a couple weeks ago, and let alone anyone that Oklahoma has faced this entire season. And that's true. Cam Coleman's still there. Perry Thompson's still there. Bryce King's still there. Eric Singleton's the leading receiver this year. All the other 4 or 5 are that term was they used for that recruiting class a couple years ago. They're all still there. While they haven't had the the hoopla of an Ohio State receiver core years ago, Bama years ago, the potential is still there. It's not impossible to think that Auburn could pop you off for a huge pass play, right? Cam Coleman making a circus catch, Eric Singleton having a huge catch and run, all possible. But I do think that Auburn's receivers are certainly the best that Oklahoma will probably see, at least as a collective group, probably the entire year. I also know that they're facing, from the Auburn side of things, they're facing Brent Venables. A lot of success against Auburn, not just at Oklahoma last year, but as the Clemson DC, because Clemson Auburn, kind of that unofficial rivalry, Tigers versus Tigers at non-con, sort of a unofficial rivalry. Look at some of those past games, even going back to the Malzahn years, even as a coordinator, as a head coach. I mean, just masterclass, if you will, with Venables calling the defense and that offense for Malzahn and Hugh Freeze very similar. Go watch some of those previous games. I know it's not an exact carbon copy, but pretty close. But defense for Auburn concerns me here. I mean, if you look at not even just the Baylor game, which they gave up almost 500 yards, I think that may have been getting close to the school record for yards given up. They gave up plays against South Alabama. I told you guys I was concerned about that game, and ultimately, while they didn't win, I was sort of validated because they did cover the spread. So even in those wins, even the Ball State game, the pass defense for Auburn has not been necessarily perfect. And they're going against the offense with John Mateer, Ben Arbuckle, the two, the mad scientists that they are, quarterback and OC. It's going to be a challenge for them, and it's going to be a challenge to stop that. And I don't think they have the players to do it. And I don't like to spot Auburn for Auburn either. I mean, it's their first time going to Norman. Go ask Michigan. A lot of those players going there, especially a somewhat younger team or a team that's not been properly tested yet, not been exposed properly. What that means, properly exposed, is at least your flaw has been exposed. Every single team in college has flaws, especially in the SEC, and we'll talk about that ad nauseum later in the show. But Auburn has not had those flaws exposed properly because they haven't lost yet. It's going to happen at some point. Could be this week, could be next week at Texas A&M. All of a sudden, top 10 A&M team. It could happen. And I, same for Oklahoma too. You can flip this around. Oklahoma, they have flaws. Could Auburn expose them? Sure, they could. Very easily, they could. Let's see what I think here. Again, the FanDuel line, -6.5 for Oklahoma. Makes sense to me. Now, most of you who remember, if you watched the show last year, we use College Football Nerds. They're not necessarily a friend of the program, but big fan of their show, at least their channel. They have their website and have their model. Now, their model, we used it last year, but the caveat with their model, Josh and Daniel have made this pretty clear. It's only going to be available after week 5, like week 5 going forward. So it's only available for at least in the regular season for 7 weeks because they need more data to get put in to it to make it accurate. So it's not available. So usually we would use it, but at least for the first 5 weeks of every, I guess, going forward for each college ball season, we can't use it. So we're not using it at least until after week 5. But the FanDuel line again, -6.5 towards Oklahoma. Gotta be honest with you, I'm picking Oklahoma to win here and cover. I hate the spot for Auburn. Look, if they win, I said this about the Baylor game. I was wrong. Prove it to me. Make me look stupid. Make me, all these other folks in the media, look stupid because we're picking against you. So I like Oklahoma to win, cover. How about that? Oklahoma 4-0. Everyone thought Brent Venables was on the hot seat and this and that, and it was a total disaster for them. Now, look, losses are coming for them, either team, but I like Oklahoma here to win and they cover, especially being at home. That feels last year's circumstances could be different. This game, seen a lot of folks not talk about it. Biggest game in the Big 12. The only other, I think game involving a ranked-on-ranked matchup besides Auburn and Oklahoma, it's Utah and Texas Tech kicking off at, I believe, since it's in Salt Lake City, like at 10 a.m., so like everyone's still having breakfast and whatnot. Big new kickoff will be there. I believe it will be Gus and Joel and Jenny Taft, a very rare non-Big Ten game that they're doing, I think, which is rare now because of the whole new media landscape and the media deals and whatnot. Utah, according to FanDuel, -3.5. This game to me is an example, and I mentioned this on Twitter last night with the Bucs game. We'll kind of circle back to this. This game to me is an example of the train derailment theory. Now, if you're wondering, well, you're making it sound like I should know what that means. You're right. It's a new thing we're doing this year. Not so subtle reference to another show that may have just ended their live stream a little bit ago, but the train derailment theory, the way I've sort of crafted it, if you will, it's sort of like how most train derailments happen. It's not to be confused with a train crash. Train derailments happen if there's like this small piece of rail that wasn't welded properly, or maybe the ballast was too there is something with the ballast, maybe the track was overgrown and whatnot. You've seen, what I'm talking about, especially if you're a fan of railroading like I am a little bit. Just those one little things, like again, the rails being off, the wooden beams maybe being a little off, the terrain being bumpy. The train can derail. Now, so far, neither of these teams have experienced bumpy track yet, but they're both playing each other, and this is where they can come in. Not a lot of folks have seen Texas Tech play. I think some folks have seen Utah play. I think, the UCLA game, which looks less and less impressive now because of the coaching change. But I think both of these teams are very competent. Utah, they got, Tim Beck, the other Tim Beck, to join them, to join Kyle Monahan. They also brought his friend, the quarterback, Devon Dampier, a good runner. More of a different style of offense that you're used to seeing from Utah. Sort of the difference, or at least the very, what I'm looking for, sort of the 180, if you will, from like an Iowa situation, right? Kirk Ferentz, a longtime head coach. Offense still the same, even though they changed coordinators. Utah under Kyle Monahan, different offense now, It's still in some ways similar, but it's a different flavor. Then there's Texas Tech, right? Texas Tech, the big deal with, Cody Campbell and Joey McGuire, a bit of a pressure cooker year. We talked about over the summer and spring about how much pressure he was giving him. Move closer to the microphone here on YouTube. There's just a lot of pressure on Joey McGuire, but not easy to get fired. At least I think he's going to, but we'll see. But everyone made a big deal about Cody Campbell and the big transfer portal class they brought in. It's a big deal. The difference of them, and Josh P brought this up earlier in his show, like literally 30 minutes ago. I was watching it live before our show started. Probably very awkward to say that, but look, we have to do a show today. He mentioned something about their Texas Tech's defensive line. The starters from last year are still there. They're just not the starters anymore because they brought the Lee Hunter kid he was at Auburn before, and then at UCF, he's there now, and a couple other big names. So that could be the difference here. That Texas Tech, that new defensive line, including the returning starters from last year who are the backups. I guess they'll be rotational pieces, I guess. Versus the Utah physicality on the offense, right? Again, bringing in a whole new offensive staff, a different emphasis on running quarterback. Should be fun, to say the least. And I expect this to be a very kind of a low-scoring game, I think. I think Utah could be sort of like one of those, dragging these teams, end them, sort of, putting them in, the phone booth and fighting each other. It could be pretty bloody, if you will, if you want to say that. So that could be in the cards here for this game being very low-scoring, physical type game. Wouldn't surprise me. Sort of what I thought we were going to get out of A&M and Notre Dame, which ended up being a game into the 40s. Not expecting that here, so I'll be again stunned again if that's the case. Again, according to FanDuel, Utah -3.5, home field advantage makes sense to me. I was torn on this one. Again, I like what Texas Tech has done in the portal. I like their head coach. I like the curtains and the tapestries of the team, especially with Brent Morton being healthy and actually playing at a higher level now. But my mind can't get off of Utah and the improvements they've made and the things that they have done to get to this position after what happened last year. If you forgot, they didn't even make a bowl game. They're about three or two wins away from doing so. I like Utah here. I think they win. No thoughts on the money line. I think they just win the game outright. So, give Utah to win. I just think they're a solid team. Again, train your element theory. I know it's a kind of a bizarre name, but trust me, you know what I'm talking about, especially with this game. I think it's a perfect example of it. Next up here, we got one more game, and then we'll have some more things on here to talk about. It might be a shorter show today. And there's other games we're previewing too. I believe it's South Carolina and Missouri. We're moving that to the Thursday show. UF goes to Miami. The Sunshine Rivalry series continues. Well, it happened last year. It's continuing into this year too. Of course, this is the return trip, 7:30 on ABC, much like the game we just talked about with Utah. Texas Tech, a rare 7:30 ABC game, not involving two SEC teams at home. How about that? Very rare. By the way, too, may also run into the same situation in a couple weeks when Florida State and Miami get together there in Tallahassee. Could also be a 7:30 kick on ABC. I think it's to be determined, but I know you guys can't see me on Spotify or on YouTube. I'm kind of smiling, just thinking about how rare that is now. That a ACC game, a big time ACC game, this time in this part of the year is on ABC and not a true SEC game. Could be two of them already. Besides, not including Week 1, two of them deep into the season. Never thought I'd ever hear that. The FanDuel line, Miami minus 7.5 makes sense given where both of these teams are. Sort of like the LSU game with Florida. I kind of wonder here, what's the vibe of the team? Has Bill Naiper lost the locker room? Is it the team quitting on them? Because I said this on Twitter, and I said this a bit on the reaction show, especially late in the game. I know it didn't seem like it. I guess I could have rephrased it a little bit. The game was competitive. It wasn't like it was like a 45-0 blowout, but just something felt different in that fourth quarter. The turnovers started piling up, and LSU started to get more of a rhythm on offense as they, because apparently Max Johnson, he was injured last year. Garrett Nussmeier was injured apparently, where he's been dealing with an injury, not related to the other one back in the during fall camp, different one. But even with him being injured, the offense had a big run towards the end of the game. It just felt like to me Florida started to quit as again the turnovers started to accumulate, and I just wondered, has Bill Naiper lost this team? I don't know. I mean, just last Saturday didn't necessarily prove it in a sense, but to me, as someone who has watched college football a long time, that to me, especially on that final big run that LSU had to sort of ice the game, that felt like to me they quit. And I just wonder, is that going to continue? Because so far, that's different if that's the case. Because last year didn't happen. Yes, everyone will bring up, the Texas game happened last year. There was a blowout. A freaking kid from Yale was starting a quarterback for Florida, not DJ Lagway, and that firmly believe, and a lot of our folks believe, that probably would have been a closer game, I think. And he's still the starting quarterback. There's no, quarterback situation. He's not getting benched because they have the transfer from Tennessee instead of the, the Purdy kid from Charlotte, who was on the roster. They just couldn't keep him on because of the grades and whatnot, or something not related to football prevented him from being on the team this year. Otherwise, you would have been hearing him, if he was on the team, potentially being the starter, maybe. But DJ Lagway is the best chance to win this game for Florida. And he needs to sort of not make those turnovers he had last week become a trend. Because we very easily could, right? I mean, you have Aiden Childs at Michigan State last year, even including this year, a bit of the whoopsie daisy king. Still have a lot of turnovers. Him, Anthony Colandrea years back. So if you're Florida, kind of hoping it's not a trend that these turnovers are just going to constantly keep on happening. So I guess it's in your best interest to make sure that doesn't happen. For Miami, it's really interesting. I think Josh Pate, again, brought this up earlier. The interesting data point here, sort of like with the South Carolina Vanderbilt game, the data point these two teams have in common somehow, I guess it just worked out that way, is South Florida. Still a good South Florida team, even though they got crushed. My opinion of them has not changed. So that back during the reaction show on Sunday and Saturday night, late Sunday or early Sunday morning. But what's interesting is that Miami crushed them, whereas Florida defensively did a lot better, or at least didn't do as bad. I mean, the final score was 18-16. So, yeah, I think that is certainly an interesting trend there. I mean, it's no secret. I'm picking Miami to win here and cover. I'm thinking about the upset and how it would happen, right? If Florida were to pull this off, how would it look? I said the same thing last week. You got to still have buy-in, and you got to have DJ Lagway be the reason why you're winning games. There's other facets of that team, the whole defensive line thing, and they're okay, but they're not that great. Receiver, same thing. It needs to be him. Can't turn the ball over either. That doesn't help either. But he's the key to all this. And Bill Naiper, look, I mean, he's calling the plays. A lot of folks who I listen to and read through, not necessarily over the moon about him. Being the primary play caller, because that's not really what he is. But I mean, he is your coach, and you have to, sort of rely on him to, at least at the moment, trust his abilities, I guess, to get it done. So, taking Miami to win, I think they cover. And again, we're saving some of the other games that are going on this weekend, like Michigan, Nebraska, South Carolina, Missouri. We're saving those for the Thursday show. So we're doing the split up thing yet again, because there's a lot of games to talk about. And I'm intending to do this show less than 45 minutes. I kind of keeping it a little bit shorter today. I guess now we're here. I mean, as we are doing this as of right now, 9:40 at night. Yes, you're a time machine back there. We are doing this at night. Some folks are trying to sleep. So we're just making sure we're accommodating for them. But regular schedule later this week, probably next week as well. At least for the moment, it'll be regular again. Unfortunately, may have to do some more night shows. That's okay. We can deal with it. I mean, I own the show. It's we have no overlords controlling it, so we have to do the show in the evening. I'm totally okay. I have to do it in the morning. I'm totally okay as well. So we can kind of do this whenever we want to, but for today, had to be in the evening. But we'll be back on normal schedule starting Thursday and then next week. So don't worry about that going forward. I've got the SEC topic I want to talk about, coaching changes. The Tuesday poll, Brian Kelly, Bucs Texans. So still a lot of show left. But we're done with the previews for now, and then we'll finish them or conclude on Thursday. Again, if you are new here, live on YouTube or on Spotify, just subscribe. It's not hard. Just click the button. You don't have to turn on notifications. I don't do that personally for the shows I follow, but it's up to you. But just subscribe. It's free. I don't, knock on your door or show up to your residence and force you to sign a form or do anything like that. The show's totally free. No Patreon page or anything like that. Show's totally free, and all the access and all the things we're talking about, not behind the paywall. It's all free of charge, if you will. I mentioned this on the reaction video recap on Saturday night, Sunday morning, about the SEC and sort of that Tennessee-Georgia game, sort of kind of confirming what the suspicions that we had, we being, I guess, me and the rest of the college football fan base and media. We're kind of thinking this thing about the SEC being a total disaster. And I think this weekend sort of represented that. We had LSU, Florida sort of going out to the wire a little bit. Tennessee, Georgia being an instant classic. Vanderbilt destroying South Carolina, even though some of that was injury-related with Sellers going out early with the concussion. I just think that the SEC this year in general is going to be an all-out war. Like I compared it, Sunday to sort of like, when you've heard about, if you're a fan like me of history, world history, hearing about, World War II and World War I, some of these, major events that happened, I guess military events that happened. While it's good for the most part, we're kind of avoiding that kind of, I guess, right now. But, and I'm hearing about those, major clashes of military might and, nation or world supremacy and whatnot. That to me feels like the SEC. The SEC to me just feels like a whole bunch of powerful teams, and for the most part, going at each other and fighting for supremacy. And they're going to be, a lot of these teams will be taking a whole bunch of losses. I mean, Tennessee's a really good team. Georgia, South Carolina, well, I guess kind of South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Alabama, Auburn, Oklahoma, all this, Florida even to a certain extent. All these good teams, they're good. They're not crapper teams. They're just good teams. And I think what's going to happen is that once we get towards after Halloween, before Thanksgiving, before rivalry week, I think everyone's going to be looking at that SEC standing chart on your Wikipedia page, on the SEC teams Wikipedia page. Like, for example, if you go to right now, let's just say, I don't know, Tennessee or Tennessee's wiki page, or Ole Miss. The Ole Miss wiki page for this year's team, you see, and they do this for every single conference, by the way, they have the Big Ten standings on there, or the SEC standings, and you see the records and whatnot. I guarantee you'll do that for, I guess, at some point, like in between like Halloween and rivalry week in November, and you'll go, man, that's a lot of, teams their conference records are below 500. Yeah, they probably are going to be, because again, all these teams have to play each other. I mean, it's so crazy that Alabama could be facing Vanderbilt after they play Georgia, and that's a losable game because Vanderbilt could be 5-0. It could also be yet another SEC on ABC primetime Saturday Night Football game too, which is insane to think about. I mean, imagine telling yourself that like 10 years ago, that Vanderbilt could be playing Bama on ABC Saturday Night Football. ABC, ESPN doing that game would have been, imagine telling yourself that 10 years ago. But not even that, just the matchup and the potential of Vanderbilt having a better record than Bama when they play each other. So, I mean, there's so many opportunities for these teams to lose multiple games. It's going to happen. I mean, Josh Peel's talking about it. The guys on Cover 3, Bud and Chip and all of them are talking about it. Again, it's going to basically be a world war. Instead of actual nations, it's college football teams in the SEC, again, just fighting each other's supremacy. And I guarantee you, whoever wins this conference, whomever it's going to be, whether it's, Georgia, Tennessee, still in the mix, obviously, Oklahoma, Auburn, Texas A&M, forgot to mention them earlier. Whoever that is going to be, they're going to have more than 2 losses. Like, no one in the SEC is going undefeated. That's obvious, if you haven't noticed. Nobody's going 1 loss, probably. Even 2 losses, it's probably pretty rare. I think 3 or 2 losses is probably the sweet spot here. 4 losses, that would be really extreme. Doubtful, but really not 0. But yeah, I just feel like the SEC league is really just just utter chaos and all out war, which is interesting because it's different than the Big Ten. Because the Big Ten, the SEC, the bigger difference between the 2 conferences about the SEC is considered the best or the better of the 2. It's not necessarily the teams on the top, because I think the teams at the top for the Big Ten are way better, in my opinion. Teams in the tier 2, tier 3, and then just the bottom tier. Bottom tier of the SEC is not bad. Like Mississippi State, yeah, they may go 4-8 or 5-7. They're still good. Arkansas, same thing, okay. Even Florida, even South Carolina, they're not crapper teams. In the Big Ten, it's like, yeah, Michigan State, like Minnesota, UCLA. I mean, it's horrible. The bottom half of the Big Ten is just really, really bad, and it's kind of weird too. I guess we'll touch on this when we do the. I'll just touching on it again in just a second, but Josh Pate had this theory a couple years ago when Luke Fickell was hired and Matt Rule was hired at Nebraska, that he thought that meant a changing position in the Big Ten, at least the way they hired coaches because of the new TV revenue that was coming in. And I think the TV execs of like NBC, CBS, and Fox kind of were hoping that some of these lower tier teams would get better coaches because they wanted a better product. Hasn't happened yet, at least to a major effect. And we've seen like Indiana, Nebraska, but like UCLA, even Iowa with Kirk Ferentz there. And look, I'm not hating on Kirk Ferentz. I know he became the Big Ten's winningest coach finally. Just delayed, I guess, if you're keeping track of that. But even that program in Iowa is just gone very stale. So, yeah, the SEC, I think, is going to be just total wild war. It's going to be a disaster. And I think this weekend, if anything, kind of confirmed that. With that Georgia-Tennessee game, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, this week with Auburn, Oklahoma, could be a total rock fight, just all-out war. So, looking forward to it. It's going to be fun to watch. Not necessarily fun if you're a fan of those teams, like if you're a Bama fan or a South Carolina fan or a Kentucky fan or a Ole Miss fan or a Texas A&M fan. If you're in Bryan College Station, whatnot. So, speaking of the Big Ten, got some coaching openings to talk about. Was considered doing a video about this Sunday night, but I was busy watching Sunday Night Football, although it wasn't a very appealing game, very entertaining game, but I was watching it, so I decided to hold back on it. Didn't want to hop on and give just loose cannon thoughts. Kind of want to wait on it, but we had UCLA and Virginia Tech. They have coaching openings now. Brent Pry was fired. Actually, no, he was fired second. Deshaun Foster was fired before him. No surprise there. I mean, the Virginia Tech one, I told you guys on the recap show, and on Twitter that I thought there was going to be moves made during the Sunday NFL games, early window. Correct on that? So this is weird for me because, again, I'm not a big fan of doing this. I don't like talking about people getting fired because it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of, the guys literally just lost their jobs. Like, I can guarantee, even as bad as Brent Pry was, and trust me, him and Foster, I know, well, at least I don't know them personally, but I think I know that these guys care about coaching college football, and I think it sucks for them that they can't do it this year. Like, they don't have any, like, they won't be doing anything on this coming up Saturday. They just won't be doing anything. Yeah, sure, you have your buyout money and whatnot. You're going to be, I'm not necessarily generational wealth, but it's just they're not doing what they love, which is coaching college football. And it sucks. You know, it sucks for Deshaun Foster. It sucks for Brent Pry. But changes need to be made, frankly. I mean, with Virginia Tech losing to ODU, again, it feels like this is like an unhealthy habit they have of losing to Old Dominion, which they've scheduled for like the next 10 years or so, which is weird. I guess that's a new rivalry or something. I mean, losing to them, just the way it happened, the fans were booing, and Lane Stadium was emptying out pretty quickly. Just not the look you wanted. I think it was inevitable that a change was coming, and I think they just decided to do it now. Same with UCLA. It's kind of the same thing, losing to a G5 team and getting blown out emphatically. I mean, it's really tough to gauge these teams. Both of these teams are in different situations. UCLA is in the Big Ten, but while they have the same sticker on their helmet, I said this on Twitter yesterday, just because you have that Big Ten sticker on your helmet, it doesn't save you from your own internal problems. And there's the problems at UCLA. The funding's not been there. That's been public out there. The enthusiasm in the Rose Bowl, which is like an hour away from their campus, it's not an ideal place for them. Sort of same thing in Miami too. I mean, even though they're good this year, it's like they need they need an on-campus stadium pronto. I think they are getting that soon, actually. So can't come soon enough. But UCLA, the same thing, man. It's just the fan interest there. They're doing better in NIL and basketball than they are in football. And football is a bigger revenue-generating sport. Let's just be real. I think for UCLA, it's just, do they care about football? Are they taking it seriously? Same with, Wisconsin when they fired Paul Chryst. I think it showed they were kind of serious a couple years ago, but I think it turned out the hire was just bad. What was I thinking about here? Yeah, I mean, again, that Big Ten sticker, while it helps, right? It's attractive, right? The Big Ten, great. It doesn't save you from your internal problems. So it'll be interesting to kind of see who the candidates are going to be for that. And they're not really necessarily get into that here. I'll touch on that in just a second, but kind of same with Virginia Tech. I think Virginia Tech is in a different situation, but their situation is they're in the ACC, which is about to implode in like 2 to 3 years. At least before the decade's over with, given where everything's going with that conference. So they will be, their goal is just to make themselves attractive for like the SEC or the Big Ten. That's their goal. And I think this next hire is actually pretty important for them, whomever that's going to be. But Virginia Tech, again, the way you think of Virginia Tech, it's like, you had Frank Beamer there, and he's like, basically God at Virginia Tech, at least football-wise. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of folks think very highly of Shane Beamer, not just because he's a good coach, but because of his last name and his father. But even me growing up in, the late 2000s, early 2010s, sort of the aughts, if you will, and then you go into the early 2010s, the way I think of Virginia Tech, even though I was really young in elementary school at the time, I still think of Virginia Tech as a very high caliber program, at least the history, not currently, but the history. Michael Vick, Terod Taylor, Logan Thomas, teams that were consistently competing in ACC championship games and winning some of them and whatnot. Just the aura of Virginia Tech, if you will. I'm using a new cultural term, but that's not there anymore. It hasn't been there. I mean, Justin Fuente came in, and yes, he sort of inherited a kind of a good situation. And once those, certain players and coaches sort of got weeded out, you started to see him as a coach get exposed. He brought in Brent Pry, who I was not a fan of. Frankly, I thought was a I know we didn't have a show back then, but it was kind of a sort of a dopey hire, in my opinion. It was just kind of, okay, so you didn't try to go any bigger, or at least a more substantial name. By the way, it was his first experience being a major college football head coach. 5 things were getting turned around last year, well, at least the year before last year, and then last year happened. Then this year, just it wasn't good enough. So, as for the candidates, again, it's too early, right? They've sort of afforded themselves some runway, and I think the reason why they made these changes this early for both of these schools was, well, I guess I mean, I was about to say it wasn't a reason, but the main reason they went this early is because they know this isn't it. Like, there will be other jobs opening up that are more high profile than these, like especially in the southeastern region, SEC in particular. There will be jobs opening for that, unfortunately, at least I guess from the coach's perspective, it sucks, but from the fan base perspective, yeah, I mean, you're getting a new coach probably. I don't know who, but there's going to be at least one or several teams in the SEC that will be having that. Some of the kind of coaching candidates that you would assume will be fixtures for these jobs, particularly Virginia Tech, Alex Golish, John Sumrall, Bob Chesney at JMU. Those are good names, but I don't know, at least personally from what I've heard, maybe Virginia Tech isn't the job they're waiting for. Clearly, maybe it's, I don't know, hypothetical, Texas A&M, let's just say, pop them out, Auburn potentially, Oklahoma. I'd imagine those would be the jobs those men are probably looking forward to get. Not saying that's insider information. I don't have any insider information, or at least insiders I talk to, just the guys I listen to at their own shows. But I would imagine that those coaches like a Sumrall, Bob Chesney, I would imagine they're waiting for other larger jobs that have stable footing. Now, of course, the names that not the younger coaches, but the general big names, if you will, particularly Virginia Tech, the ones that keep on popping up, hearing are, Jimbo Fisher and John Gruden. John Gruden, we talked about, I much like Bob Chesney and Alex Golish and all of them, several. With Gruden, just think bigger. I don't think Virginia Tech is at least a job it's appealing to him. But Jimbo Fisher, he's on the ACC network. He's been open about getting back in the game. He's been out of the job for at least out of coaching for a couple of years now, sort of doing the Dale Mullen route. As they say, your stock can only go up while you're on TV. Who's to say he doesn't get some interest in that job? He's from the region, West Virginia, but close enough. Just a name to watch. Just name to watch there for that. But yeah, coaching changes, UCLA, Virginia Tech, not the last we'll be hearing of coaching changes for any school, frankly. There will be more jobs opening up here very soon, specifically in the Southeastern Conference, and I guess the Big Ten too. There's some coaches there that are unfortunately going to be on the way out sooner rather than later. So it won't be the last you'll hear of coaching changes before November, I think. The Tuesday poll, Week 4 edition. I forgot to post the other last week's poll. The problem is when I'm doing it, it's a long list, so I guess we'll see if we continue doing that. But since no one watched the show, I guess whatever. But yeah, we may as well just continue doing it, but we may not post the actual thing on Twitter per se. But the Tuesday poll comes out every single Tuesday. We do it, fill it out, and I have my spreadsheet in front of me, and we'll go through all the teams and sort of talk about them, give them their airtime. We're counting down as usual because you can't see it. So since you can't visually see it, I'll just explain it to you. We're going from 25 all the way to number 1. So we're starting off from 25 to 21 first. Texas Tech is back in. They were not in there last week, I believe. They're 3-0, very impressive win over Oregon State, even though they're not necessarily a P4 team, but still very impressed. Louisville didn't play. They dropped down significantly. Though the JMU win is not terrible. It's just, the Miller-Moss and his turnovers. Still the last thing you kind of saw before they went dark last week. Mississippi State didn't really move that much. They're at 23. Missouri at 22. Tennessee dropped a little bit, but some teams moved up. I know in the power rating world, this is not power ratings, by the way, these are rankings, an actual poll that I did of my own opinion, not a calculator's opinion. So Tennessee dropped down just a little bit, about where they were last week. So no real change. Actually, let me look here. Was that about the same? Yeah, around the same. So not too much of a drop off for them. let's see here now. So we did them. So we'll do 20 through, I guess, 20 through 16. Auburn is at number 20. They're 3-0. They play Oklahoma this week. USC moves up just a little bit at 19. Nebraska moves up. They play Michigan. We'll preview that game. The Thursday show, they're 3-0, number 18. 17, Vanderbilt. Huge move. Like, massive move. After beating South Carolina, they came in before, so we were ahead of the AP poll, certainly. So they are at 17, and at 16 is Bama. I feel like they dropped just a little bit. I mean, about where they were last week. They moved down because other teams had to move up. All right, 15 through 11. Some more movement here. Louisville, Illinois at 15. Again, then it's not they didn't look bad. It's just other teams that are ahead of them, or just there's some more movement there, if you will. At number 14, USF. No real change here. They're still a good team, though the AP doesn't have them ranked anymore. I don't think. Actually, let me double check. I don't think they were ranked, which is not surprising. Let's see here. South Florida football. They might be still ranked. I don't know. I don't think they are. Let me see here. I know they were. That was the whole thing last week. No, they're no longer ranked. We also have them ranked. Again, like I said on the reaction show, just because they lost, my opinion of them didn't change. So there's that. They're still at 14. They're still a good team. I don't care. They're still a good team. Number 13, Texas. The UTEP game. They've not looked impressive. Defense is still good, but they're wasting a really good defensive unit. Also didn't help, too. And I said this on the Sunday show that it didn't help that all these other games at that window were on a rain delay or a weather delay. And everyone was, hopping to SEC Network and, watching Arch and Texas look like complete garbage. So, cool. Number 12, this will be really controversial if you haven't noticed yet. They have not appeared yet. That's because they are at number 12, Notre Dame, at 0-2. They're still a good team. Same thing with South Florida. Just because they're 0-2, my opinion of them has not changed. They're still a good team. I think they'll get a win, this weekend, I think they play this weekend, obviously, yeah. So, they'll be okay. Number 11, LSU, they dropped down a little bit, mainly because of the Clemson loss is looking less and less impressive. Also being down just a little bit because of the Garrett Nussmeier thing, him not being fully injured. My opinion of them will change just a little bit if he's not fully healthy, because he is sort of the engine of that team. Defense is still good, though, so they can move up again, but they did move out top 10. All right, top 10 time. A lot of teams moved up here, big time. We're going out from 10 to 1. Number 10, Utah, 3-0. Very impressive. Yes, I know the UCLA loss looks over the win. It's kind of cool, whatever. But they're still, at this moment, they're an impressive team. At least they did what they were supposed to do against the schedule they were given. Number 9, Texas A&M, shooting all the way up to number 9. Very impressive then. They're, regardless of Notre Dame's record, that's one of the biggest ones they've had there in a long time. So that's very, very, very encouraging there for A&M. They're number 9. Number 8, Georgia Tech. I believe they were 12. We've had them 12 consistently. Moved up just slightly. We expect them to beat Clemson. What they were supposed to do, you get rewarded. Number 7, they're off this week and they play they have another bye week, Kent State. Florida State 2-0, no real change. I believe they were top 10 last week. Yeah, they're top 10, just moved up a little bit because the teams moved down. Number 6, Oklahoma. Again, moved up, very impressed. We'll get that spot before Auburn. That actually impressed me more than the Michigan win, so that's good. Georgia, number 5. Didn't change that much. I think the top 10 were the top 5. They didn't really change that much, except for Oregon moving in, which is our number 4. Again, no real changes. Just someone had to move down, being LSU, so Oregon replaced them at number 4. Number 3, number 2, number 1 hasn't really changed at all. I think it's the same as it was last week. So Penn State at 3, Miami 2, Ohio State 1. And Ohio State, I believe, is off this week, I think. If I'm not mistaken. Oregon's also, I believe, off as well. So, cool beans, I guess. So, yeah, the Tuesday poll. Week 4 edition. I want to touch on this real quick before we get to Bucs Texans. Brian Kelly. They beat LSU beating Florida, huge rivalry win, right? At least you would imagine it's a huge win. Got a little fired up with the press the other day. Now, he has since apologized, which, for what? I don't know why he would apologize for it, but he got a little frustrated with the media, talking about the offensive output, and I've touched on this a little bit, actually several times already, but I guess I'll sort of rehash it. This moment where, with Brian, his response to it, I think it was a question about, offensive related, and he got mad and said, I think, something to the quote of, what you want us to do, score 100 points on Florida? To me, this whole argument, I didn't have a problem with it. I didn't have a problem with Brian's response, and nor is it the first time we've seen this. We sort of saw the same reaction, the backlash, after last year when they lost to USC. When he was, banging the table and saying, we're back here again. I didn't have a problem with it either. And I think what is really weird about sports, especially for folks who, the fly-by NFL types who don't really watch a lot of college football, they expect their coaches to be, at least in the NFL, sort of like clones and sort of be, dry personalities and not show much emotion. What did you want Brian Kelly to do? Not say anything? Like, not have any emotion? I think his response is pretty fair. What did you want him to do? Like, Florida, even though, yes, they've had their struggles, it's an SEC team. And like I said, the SEC is going to be a full-out war. And it's, it's going to be tough. And I think expecting, them to score 40 or 45 points or, hell, 1 billion points, like, what do you want them to do? Like, score that many points? You won a game, an emotional game that you lost last year, got your revenge, and now everyone's mad because, you didn't score enough points. You guys won. You guys kind of covered the spread, if I'm not mistaken. So it wasn't like you guys were like, 13-9 or something like that, like Iowa. I think LSU's offense is better than Iowa. So, yeah, kind of defending Brian Kelly here. A lot of folks want to find ways to hate him because of the way he's some villain now. He's like public enemy number one for some reason. Like, him and Dabo was tweeting too, but Dabo went off today on his reporters. Like, I don't know what you want him to do. I have to show no emotion at all. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on Brian Kelly there. Little defensive Brian Kelly, BK. He's certainly having it his way this year. So, that's, have to admit that, right? Having what was it, like the Tiger Paw for Clemson over in their locker room and whatnot, and them finally getting that their week 1 win for the first time this decade. Good for them, and I just kind of feel like a lot of folks are shitting on him for no apparent reason, at least no reasonable reason. Again, if you are new here, again, make sure to subscribe, like the videos, follow me on Twitter X too. I didn't think I mentioned that earlier. This is the height of our, the reason why we do this show. It's college football season. Of course, the Buccaneers are playing. We do have some stuff about Marvel this week we'll get into on Thursday, I think, a little bit. Actually, some movement to be had, particularly with Alex Perez and that Q&A he released. Some juicy stuff in there, believe it or not. If you haven't checked out good old Alex's Q&As on the Cosmic Circus, the Marvel stuff, if you're a fan of that, go check that out. A lot of insightful stuff there. Alex, very well respected in the, the social media scooper realm, if you will. But this is the time of the show, if you're new here, that we talk about the Buccaneers. On Tuesdays, we do the reaction to their weekend, this past weekend's game, which is on Monday yesterday. So if you're not a NFL Tampa Bay fan, just, have a good rest of your Wednesday or rest of your Tuesday night and Wednesday. But it's a water real quick, and then we'll properly talk about this game and react to it. No, it's really weird. It's, again, I'm so used to doing this show in the afternoon. It's kind of bewildering, sort of a bewildering concept. Rarely ever use that word. Doing this show late at night, kind of weird. I don't know. Maybe we will start doing it late at night. Who knows? Maybe we'll change it up once in a while, just even without certain circumstances. But we'll probably keep it during the day. But, Tampa Bay, 2019 over to Houston Texans. 2-0 for the, was it our 4th consecutive year? By the way, Jim Dunaway over on Next Round Live, fellow Bucs fan, there in Birmingham, pointed this out on Twitter last night. I didn't even think about it. This will be the first time that the Buccaneers have ever won in that stadium at NRG. Mind blown. First win there. Look, NRG Stadium has not been around that long, and nor has the Texans, but huge deal for them, huge deal, especially the last time they were there facing that mostly the same roster. Different type of game yesterday, more a low-scoring game, 2019. This game, sort of in a lot of ways, I touched on the train derailment theory, mentioned it last night. Just like with this game, we talked about it with the Texas Tech Utah game. This game was an example of that too. I mean, just so many things that went wrong for Tampa, even in a win. The special team stuff in particular. Just again, those little things that you probably don't think about it during the game. But if you lose or win the game, you just go, man, if that little thing went a different way, the result could have changed. And for Tampa, it's special teams. I mean, they had the blocked punt, the missed field goal, which is kind of becoming a trend with McLaughlin, the kicker, who was really good last year. I don't know what happened. So yeah, that was sort of a bit of a bumpy spot there in the tracks, but look, Tampa survived and they got past it, and I think that's a huge deal for them. Baker, as I said on Twitter last night, the bread is continuing to rise with him, at least for another week. That final drive, and it's really interesting. Some of these quarterbacks in the NFL, you see this with like Mahomes and Lamar, Josh Allen, even some of the really young guys in the NFL currently. That some of these really talented guys, even with someone like Baker, when you give these guys a chance to win the game with enough time, like a minute 45 last night when they started their final drive, which ended up being a Rashard Wright touchdown, welcome back, and welcome your first touchdown of the year. These guys can cook, man. I'm not saying that it's a I mean, I'm not, it's not reference to Russell Wilson, but even he this past weekend looked pretty good in a loss. But again, some of these quarterbacks who are top 10 caliber guys, top players in the NFL and the pros, even in college too, you get these guys to, let them, do their thing and sort of, science their way out of losing. They can do it, man. And I think Baker is certainly getting up there. I mean, he's had, game-winning drive last week against the Falcons, last year against the Saints, second game, which I was at. Even going back to those in LA, with that Thursday night game against the Raiders, I believe. So he's done it before, and he certainly did it again yesterday. I mean, he's just, imagine telling yourself this, going back to when he, it's something that's been exhausted, but it's just insane to think about. When he was released from the Carolina Panthers and he went to, that aforementioned Rams game, middle of the week after Stafford went down. Just imagine telling yourself, or telling yourself then, or maybe your future self, going back to yourself then, saying, "Hey, in a couple years, Baker, by the way, is going to Tampa after this season, which would have been 2022. He's going to go to Tampa, replace Tom Brady, or at least be the successor to Tom Brady, and he is going to lead Tampa to the playoffs every single year he's there, and they win the division." Your mind would have been blown because you saw Baker, back. Besides that one really good year there in Cleveland, it's just kind of meh. And I think Josh Pate's sort of theory, if you will, about the cannot versus have not. With Baker, he had not sort of grown up. He had not sort of developed into a really good, pro quarterback. It wasn't that he couldn't. He could. And, it was all there. Same thing with what we were saying about, Daniel Jones and with the Colts. It's the cannot versus have not. He was not doing it. Doesn't mean he couldn't do it. I think Baker's showing guys that. I think for Tampa, even in the win, and of course we'll talk about the Texans, even though we're not a Texans fan, we'll still talk about them because we do talk about the winners and the losers. It's our policy here, especially in college ball too. We do the same thing. Tampa in the win, even though they won, still passing defense is still not good. We reiterated it yesterday on Twitter. Still not good enough, and I think that will be a problem for them going forward. They get the Jets this week. Quarterback health to be determined. I don't care. I'm kind of concerned about this game this weekend. Short rest. They're going to be going against a very good receiver and Garrett Wilson. Doesn't matter who their quarterback is. He's, as Tampa has seen with Ibuka, having 3 touchdowns already through 3 games or for 2 games. Ohio State receivers are, especially nowadays with Brian Hartline being there in Columbus, luxury to have. But even Ibuka, he had that touchdown catch early, which is good. Man, great to see him continue having a good early start to his rookie year. He made his first big mistake. That drop, I believe, towards the middle of the second half, I believe, or second quarter, I believe. So yeah, he's, like I said, on the Thursday show last week, that eventually he will make a mistake at some point, and there's one of them. So not surprised there. Again, pass defense concern, defense in general concern. A lot of guys going down. You had, I know Tampa O-line, there's more problems there, but it didn't matter really that much, which is kind of strange. Kind of credit to that whole, the O-line coaching staff there. But defense, I do know that Kalijah Kancey's been lost for the season, which sucks because he was, before he got hurt yesterday, was looking really, really good. That's concerning too. So that's, that's not like the whole season's a total disaster, but some of these younger guys have to step up now. So that's no little thing. That's a big deal. As for the Texans, I mean, look, their offensive line was just as bad as I thought. Even with Tampa with the injuries on their D line, they were still pretty atrocious. I mean, C.J. Stroud was 95% that, or not that much, like 80% of that game yesterday was on his back, and it was, if you're a Texans fan, I can't imagine how rough that is. I mean, trust me, going through the Jameis years and the third quarter years as a Bucs fan, trust me, we've seen bad offensive lines and bad pass protection, but there's some good spots for the Texans. I mean, Mick Chubb had a good run. Nice to see him. I mean, I know he's not the same type of player now, but nice to see him there. That one catch to Nico Collins on the first drive. Good catch again, and another example of the Tampa defense being very sus in the pass defense. But Houston, their O-line is not very good. I think that was pretty evident going back to the game the previous week against the Rams and even this week against us, being Tampa. It just wasn't good enough. And I don't even think that's C.J. Stroud's problem. It's just they have a whole other host of issues there that are not related to quarterback, contrary to popular belief. We'll see about them. We obviously won't talk about them again, but I guess I'll watch a little bit on Sundays. But speaking of Tampa, again, they have the Jets. It's 1 o'clock on Fox. Again, it'll be Kenny Albert and that crew again, it looks like. So there's that. They have the Eagles coming up too, so look at spot. So, it doesn't get any easier. Need to go on the road to Seattle. Great. Can't wait. And that's the show. Again, we'll be back to regular programming, scheduled programming. At least the times of the show won't be doing this late again, at least for a while, but who knows? We'll probably have to bring it back. As for the Tropics, I know, that's the thing we talked about before a few weeks ago. So far, so good. I know there was getting a little cough there. A couple of areas they're looking at, and folks over at the Hurricane Center. Nothing threatening the U.S. just yet. The area that's been highlighted in the red on the NHC map, that should be a fish storm, but it's still hurricane season. We're still watching some stuff, so not over yet, but so far so good. And it looks like hopefully, at least at the moment, I know of course I say this and we have issues, but at least here in Florida particularly, we can at least at the moment breathe a sigh of relief, but still a long ways to go, right? Wilma, Milton, two more recent major hurricanes that occurred in October. That can certainly happen. So not letting our guard off just yet. We still have at least 2.5 months left of season, at least 1 month of peak season. So again, we'll be back on a Thursday, regular time in the afternoon, not during the night. So we'll be same thing going forward, at least for a little bit, I would guess, next week. So we'll be this time next week. It will be our show will have already been recorded. So again, be sure to follow us on Twitter, X, podcast feed, YouTube. Subscribe there as well. Until Thursday, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday night. How much of that's left? This year on the East Coast, it's 2 hours left. Enjoy your Wednesday until Thursday. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you on the next stream.